Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second lecture for SOE 260. I thought I'd try something different and give you a video in addition to the notes. And my goal is to provide a little insight into the topics we discussed this week, and it's for Chapter 2 of the Owens text. It's titled Describing Language. That's the name of the chapter. And remember that what we do here is not meant to replace the book. You still have to read the book because it goes a lot more in depth than I will. But hopefully this will answer some of your questions and, again, provide a little more insight than you had coming into the week. Okay, and our objectives are to relate the generative or nativist theories of language development to constructionist theories and describe the goals of child language research. All right, to get things kicked off, we'll discuss linguistic theory. And it's pretty interesting, but some people just argue that language development happens. It just happens, and few can fully explain it. And the next part, who's who in the study of language? There are linguists, psycholinguists, sociolinguists, and behavioral psychologists. And that you're provided with a brief description of each, kind of the hallmarks of each of those professions and what they do. And moving on. One of the first things I want to discuss is nature versus nurture. And there's a debate that's raged on forever, and it continues to this day. And it's also between people who study language. And the basics of the argument are nature describes in terms of language, nature is described as genetic. You get things from nature and genetically that you're you have a predisposition for. And then the other argument is nurture, which is environment. So, is someone born with specific abilities, or do they learn these different things through where they live and who they interact with? And how language experts research this and how they learn about it is through twins, because identical twins share 100% DNA match, and fraternal twins share 50% match of their DNA. So I thought it would be interesting to start this video, and it's only a couple minutes, on nature versus nurture. And it is Morgan Freeman. Hopefully there won't be a advertisement, but of course there is. Okay. So while we're going through this, I'll turn down the volume. While we're waiting for the penguins, and they are very cute, we're going to kind of take a look. This is to give you a little feedback on this video. It's Morgan Freeman, and it's Into the Wormhole, I believe, is the title of it, but he discusses nature versus nurture in a much more interesting way than I can. So once this goes, we will get it going. And here we go.
Are you shaped by your genes or by your environment? It's the problem that always gets in the way of studies on how genes are connected to complex traits. But twins offer a way to separate the effects of nature and nurture. Identical twins share virtually 100% of their genetic material. Fraternal twins share 50% of their genes.
By comparing identical and fraternal twins, we were able to demonstrate in a general way that genes have effects on almost everything.
Eric began looking at very large samples of twins from all around the U.S., from all socioeconomic groups. He used IQ as a predictor of future wealth of a child, a link most studies find to be very strong.
What we found was quite surprising. Children raised in poverty, their home environment was by far the most important factor. Their genes seemed to play almost no role at all.
If a child with genes predisposing him or her to be a financial wizard is raised in an extremely harsh environment, that exceptional DNA may not shine through.
And then as you move from kids raised in those those really terrible circumstances up to kids raised in the middle class, the role of genes became more and more and more important. And once you got to the middle class or better, genes took over. And by the time you got to the wealthiest people in the study, genes were making all the difference.
Genes do have important effects on how rich or poor children will be when they grow up, but it's an effect that is only visible when kids grow up outside of poverty.
To some extent, it's probably true that people who wind up living in poverty have some kind of genetic difference from people who wind up making a lot of money. I think what our work has shown is that it doesn't matter what kind of genetic tendencies some of these kids may have had. If they're raised in a bad enough environment, they're not going to be able to express them.
Okay. So that was interesting. And again, who can do it better than Morgan Freeman, right? All right, back to the PowerPoint. So thanks for watching that for me. That gives you a brief overview of nature versus nurture, and also just to let you know that there are different camps. Linguists or people who study language are in different camps, and that's kind of what we're going to get into. There's a generative or nativist approach and a constructionist or empiricist approach. Okay, I can't talk today for some reason. But the generative nativist approach to language development, the big ideas with this are, whenever you think of the generative approach to language development, think Noam Chomsky, a researcher who started in the 50s and tried to identify universal rules. And he identified a part of the brain called the language acquisition device, or LAD, where people start to develop language skills. And it was a very mathematical approach to sentence deconstruction, and it's a mathematical approach to language and how it's developed in children when they first start. And they support nature in the nature versus nurture debate. So they believe that genetics plays the larger role as opposed to the environment when it comes to learning language. And then in 1973, a gentleman named Roger Brown, he kind of tried to debunk that Chomsky's work a little bit, and what he did was he concluded that the universal grammar did not account for acquisition of all languages. So, and there was no evidence to support some of the earlier ideas, and that led to the semantic revolution. Sounds crazy, right? But the semantic revolution stated that the semantic syntactic relations apparent in children's early language correspond closely to categories of infant and toddler sensory motor cognition. Whew. Okay, so again, this is a supplement, so make sure you read the Owens text about the semantic revolution. All right, and moving on to the second approach to language development we have here are the supporters of the constructionist approach. And they believe that nurture is actually outweighs or has more influence when it comes to language development. So where you come from means more to your language skills than your genetics. And then I have you'll see the second thing there. It's a child-directed speech, and we'll watch that. It's only a 16-second clip. And then I mentioned emergentism earlier, and that's the foundation. It's fairly new, a new development and kind of a new approach. And it's the foundation for language is present in every human and is not something that is formed especially for language development. And a gentleman by the name of Skinner, B.F. Skinner, had done a lot of the early work in 1957 in a book called Verbal Behavior. And he kind of took the viewpoint that learning language is similar to learning any other behavior in humans. And the central tenet behind the constructionist approach is that language emerges from language use. The more you do it, the more you learn, which would, is reasonable. Okay, so let's watch this clip. Short clip. Uh-oh. Okay, back.
The water. Do you see the water? Let's put some ducks on. 1, 2, 3,
Okay, so there you go. We don't have to watch that again. But that is the quick version. Okay, and that was just a quick sample of child-directed speech, how we as adults talk to our children, and just to give you a basic overview. There are 4 goals when it comes to language research, and they are to confirm general linguistic principles, discover language development principles, and clarify the relationship of language to development in other areas such as cognition, provide a theoretical description of language development. All right, and again, your text gets into much more detail of those, but for our purposes, knowing the 4 goals and kind of starting to investigate those is fine. Okay, and to kind of close out the first section of our PowerPoint lecture, language research. We're going to discuss language research in a little bit more detail and some research principles in general, but what I have here is a link to the UC San Diego Center for Research and Language Department, and there are the site or the link that I have here you can click on and you can view some of the studies that they're doing, and that just know that they're being conducted in learning centers throughout the United States, but this will give you an idea of some of the things they're working on, which is interesting. So I can click there, but I encourage you, just to give you a view of the site, but that's what it looks like. So I encourage you to go ahead, review this site, and kind of see some of the new things that they're doing, and it actually gives you some of the past studies that they've done. And it's good to know what's going on in